Good morning. Good morning. Welcome, everybody. We're so excited to have you here for the final lecture in the experimental weaving talk series. It's such a pleasure to have you all joining us. And please come on in, find a seat, whatever works best for you. And I'm going to begin us this morning by reading a land acknowledgement. We honored the unnamed and named artists who accumulated knowledge our research in textiles draws from. We commit to respecting and learning from these enduring traditions as we acknowledge the history and presence of Indigenous people in the Colorado Front Range. We recognize that we occupy the lands, traditional ancestral lands of the Ute, Arapaho, and Cheyenne peoples, whose rich cultural heritage continues to shape this region. We honor their deep-rooted traditions, including their skilled textile practices, which embody stories, spiritual beliefs, and communal knowledge passed down through generations. The intricate beadwork, weaving, and garment making of these indigenous communities reflect a profound connection to the land and their resilience as artisans and as storytellers. Thank you, everybody. I'm going to hand over the reins to Laura, but before I do, please, as always, drop where you're joining us from this morning. Like I said, this is the last in our lecture series for 2025. So please let us know where you're joining from. And Laura is going to get us introduced this morning. Nice to see you
Okay.
all.
Sorry, I was wrestling with a little bit of tech on my end, but welcome everyone. Good morning. Again, yeah, reiterating what Steven said, this is our last talk in the 2024-2025 series. I'm really happy Carolina can join us today and close out our series with what I'm sure is going to be a fantastic talk. So this series had 8 different talks starting in the fall and going until now. Just want to remind you that all of these talks are also available on YouTube for you to share or watch again. Maybe watch while you're weaving, because what's better than that? All right, so just to say a little bit about us, we are the Unstable Design Lab. We have been hosting this talk series. This is our 3rd installment of the talk series. If you want to learn a little bit more about our lab and our propensity to wear matching outfits, you are welcome to do that at this URL or at our website, unstable.design. One of the main projects we've been putting a ton of energy into this year and in the future is AdaCAD, which is a parametric design workspace for creating woven drafts. And we've been hosting a series of virtual workshops. Those have been really well attended, and we also have those available on our YouTube channel. If you're interested in getting started or learning how to do image-based weaving workflows, which hopefully will kind of tie into the talk today, which is going to focus on the kind of integrations of image processing and weaving and technology. So here is our YouTube archive. Our YouTube channel, of course, is just Unstable Design Lab. And again, we've been posting each talk after it occurs, usually within a week. So it should be up there soon. Without any further delay, I'd like to welcome Carolina Vélez Muñiz, who's joining us today from Mexico City. Carolina is an independent artist and curator, and seeing her work was really exciting because I think she has a really unique and refreshing way of approaching electronics and cloth. Not as products or gimmicks, but as ways that really question the materiality of both of these formats and their histories, and what we can kind of ravel and unravel in those spaces. She's going to be talking to us today about her practice, but I also maybe wanted to give a shout out that she recently launched a public art piece at the, correct me if I get the name wrong, at the Arte Carrillo Museum. And so that should be out, and she's going to talk a little bit more about that today. So if you would join me in the chat, welcoming Carolina, clap your hands, write hello, let us know that you're here and listening, and I will turn it over to you, Carolina. Hopefully, let's see, stop share. Perfect.
Hello, everyone. Let's see. Okay. So that is working well. Okay. So hi, everyone. It's nice to see you all here. People I know, people I don't know, people I don't know yet. My name is Carolina Vélez Muñiz, and I am an artist and weaver from Mexico City. I mainly work with textiles from their construction to their manipulation. So weaving, but also patterning, sewing, dyeing. And I also work with electronics for sound and video, like building circuitry for um, synthesis or like oscillations, and also processing. So and these are just my images of presentation of just things that I like to see. I tend to take pictures of my surroundings, and this I took, I think, a couple months ago, but they're just like celebratory plastic pompons that get put out for the Virgin really close to my house. And I am, okay, let me see. Okay, yeah. So I have always been fond of threads. For many years, I've been curious about their ways of constructing, about their malleable nature, which combined with tension and organization results in cloth. I started weaving during my bachelor's studies at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago. I switched from painting because my experience studying contemporary painting lacked rigor in a technical and conceptual manner. In painting, anything goes, as it is a medium that's immediately associated with art. On the other hand, I grew up looking more at textiles and going to museums. I would see embroidered napkins and rebosos in my house all the time. It took me a little bit to understand that these textiles have the potential to be cultural objects regarded on the same level as art. And that is a project that I've been working with since college. And the slide I'm showing right now is a rebozo, a like traditional shawl from Mexico that I wove for a project in 2020. Um, and okay, yeah, there. So I found within the Fiber and Material Studies department, particularly within John Paul Morabito's weaving classes, a space where the conceptual, historical, and social way of making was intrinsically held in the techniques and objects we were producing. As a student, I felt that I needed more investment in the production of my work. And in woven cloth, I found faithful witnesses of time spent on its making. Coming from Mexico, I realized I had inherited a work ethic from here, which involves a positive correlation between the appreciation and admiration and the time and effort spent working. This work ethic was also mixed with the fact that the history of fiber art and weaving within contemporary art is pretty recent. So the effort of making a piece that is not only the effort of making a piece of a woven piece of art is not only rigorous in the terms of craft, but also conceptually and historically. And this means that you have to connect your woven objects back to Western art history. And overall, when I came across weaving, I felt like I was learning and growing more in alignment with the values that I was raised with, and also with the ways that I wanted my artwork to be read. And sorry if you can hear very strong barks. And so how, like, even if my work is very, very technical, I very quickly realized that my approach to making is always pretty improvisational. So I'm always looking for something new through trial and error. I think that we can call this approach experimental in the way that I am learning my tools to then play with them by arranging differently in time. So this becomes improvisation. Like I have my woven structures, which I arrange in a particular way. And then this becomes experimentation because I'm whenever I'm constructing something in this specific way that I'm showing in the slide. I don't know what I'm going to get until I finish it. And so experimentation from improvisation happens when we surprise ourselves with the same instrument over and over again. And I work by first setting up my parameters. So what kind of threads I will be using, what colors I will dye them, which woven structures I will thread the loom for. And then while making, I make use of those parameters intuitively. Like, when does it feel right to switch structures? How can I incorporate a mistake back into the piece? Which rhythm of making can I keep up with the most? So I call this like a figuring out and then breaking up of structures. And I think it's my very geeky way to feel rebellious. And eventually, I ended up using this same mode of making for sound and dance improvisation. Movement and time can be explored through this breaking up of structures, of our own body, of our own listening. And this is just one example of how, throughout the years, I've applied or translated weaving lessons to other techniques. I have many interests in general, but also within my work. And that has led me to work in multimedia. Over the years, I have been looking for ways to integrate these different paths that I've followed: the textile work, the painting, the sound, the electronics, the dance, um, and I started doing this integration by finding connections between the technical aspects of the things that I like to do. For example, visually comparing diagrams, like weaving drafts and scores and schematics. And I think that it's funny how all the media that I like to work with have some form of graphic components for notation. And the times, sorry, I'm getting very distracted with the dogs barking, and I'm going to just say something to them. How? Okay, I think they've stopped. But
You can leave it here and we'll contemplate the image while you address the dogs.
I think they are quiet for now. Um, yeah, and then I realized that I haven't gone through the images. So I'll go back and explain. And this is a piece that I did on a frame loom that is just a play of structures. So that was like the main idea when I was making it. I was like, okay, I just want to improvise while I'm building this cloth. And even, I just ended up adding more like the vinyl, and then the other woven, the muslin. It was just an exercise. And then this image is taken from a performance that I did with a duo that I have with Raquel Salgado, who is a buto dancer. And in that, whenever we improvise, I usually am responsible for most of the sound, and she's responsible for most of the dance. But we try to think of how we can be shadows of each other. And I usually improvise with instruments that I make. So be it like contact mics that I solder myself, or oscillators that I build in an analogous form. And then this piece is one of those that I'm starting to integrate the different paths. So I have a reference of the woven structures that were used for memories for very old computers, and then I have the circuitry for the oscillators, and then I also have MP3s which have landscapes of sonic landscapes of the city. And I called this piece Core Memory. So I'm probably gonna reread a little bit of this, but the times that I have been working with these kinds of media, I physically feel how my brain is activated in a similar way, as they involve very abstract and technical knowledge. Okay. And for example, I remember a couple of years ago when I saw analog processed video for the first time, or at least knowingly saw it. I thought that the visual qualities, the way of abstracting, the flattening of the image, the color blocking was similar to that of woven images. Then, as I began learning about analog video, I was actually very excited to find out that the composite video signal appeals to horizontal and vertical lines, which then are translated and arranged on a screen. So I guess I can make a little diagram, but the like a signal would look something like this. So then this and then this would probably not exist because this has to be the lowest point of the signal. But then this tells the screen when a horizontal line starts. And then I I forget the exact number. It might be something like 47 lines. I don't remember very well, but then whenever you have that full number, you have another signal that the image has to start back again at the top. And I was like, whoa, that's weaving. And okay. So I think that by sharing processes or concepts between media, there is a possibility of expansion by bringing together worlds that maybe otherwise wouldn't touch. Through this sharing, the more common ways of making textiles or circuits are expanded upon to have more or at least less common uses, applications, or processes of construction. I have been thinking of these expansive processes as translations through technique. They are experimental processes which are not focused on making faithful copies. When we accept the limitations of techniques, we accept the fact that we'll be losing something of its matrix but acquiring a new sense. And then this image is a risograph print that I did, I think, 3 or 4 years ago. And it comes from a talk that I had with a friend where I was telling him about the development of coding for computers and how it started from Jacquard looms, and he mentioned that he's from an indigenous community, a Mayan community from Quintana Roo, I think. And he said that the word that the elderly people use there for computers is the same for looms, and that's kemashtebe, that's the word. And then up in the corner, you have something like ancestral technology, millenary technology. So just trying to make connections. And the images were from, I gave in Midjourney prompts to have the computer imagine a loom and and the computer together. Okay, so I actually went ahead on my slides, but I think can't return, so I'll just leave it there. Following this same thread, I started understanding weaving as a technology which processes reality, not only by processing raw materials into organized networks, but also mentally, emotionally, through my own affects. So weaving represents a processed true digital version of our reality. Textiles are a support of identity and codified containers of information. They are something like ancestral screens. And by acknowledging this potential of textiles, I've been looking to take responsibility in codifying my own reality and also to fulfill a need of connecting with pre-Hispanic modes of making, as I come from a country with such a rich history of textiles, and also full of techniques which have been and continue to be forgotten generation after generation. And it is conscious, and this forgetting is a conscious and an unconscious erasure, which is product of colonization, urbanization, and globalization. And I think that most people have family members, grandmas, or other members who they know that they either wove or embroidered very highly technical napkins or just cloth, and most people stop doing it. And even if it's a family workshop, they tend to switch from more artisanal modes of making to more industrial and more optimized modes of producing cloth. So that is kind of like an introduction of my how I think about weaving, how I think about art, where I come from, and then I want to present to you two projects which are part of like a same exhibition that are currently in view at Museo de Arte Carrillo in Mexico City. And this project, or these two projects, it's like a main project which is kind of divided into two. It consists on a public art piece that is commissioned for the outside, which is what we can see on the screen right now. And it's sort of a dressing of the museum's fence. And then there's a second moment inside where the commissioned artists can show other processes that we are carrying out. So Telar Pedregal is a public art piece which was commissioned and curated by Julia Perez Schetnan for the museum. And the piece consists of a vinyl print, which is about 38 by 7 feet long, and it's pasted on the museum's billboard fence. And this project is an experimental translation of weaving, which was articulated from several premises, like have it be a weaving, which is actually not possible because it's vinyl print, but I did arrange it in a logic similar to weaving drafts and built it in a repetitive, manual, and meditative way like weaving is. And then also have it be a composition that visually works from several blocks afar, but also really up close, because people, it's like on the corner, so people see it from all different places. And for that, I included a pattern which is appreciated from afar, and it's built from squares that are 4 by 4 inches that have many details inside of them, and they are suggesting all that can be codified within cloth's thread and structure. And you can see this is the structure at the pattern at the top is the one that I ended up using pretty much, and it actually is connected to another premise, which was to reference the museum's collection. So this pattern came from this painting, from like the top, like having it and mirroring it, and on and on and on. And then looking at the collection online, I noticed that there were several paintings and prints from Jose Clemente Orozco and David Alfaro Siqueiros, which represented lava fields. And following the idea that I have been working with for quite some time, that traditional textiles around the world represent or tend to represent the surroundings of the person who weaves at a symbolic and also at a material level. I also decided to include that as a premise, and I happen to live near the museum in the south of Mexico City, and this area is a now asphalted lava field from the eruption of the Xitle volcano, which you can see on the right. And the name means belly button in Nahuatl. And then on the left, you can see one of the first First, I forgot the name. One of the first trials of the making of the piece. So I decided that I wanted to do collage. So I just took some photos from my phone and cut them up and arranged them. And it's like very close to my house, that image. And I think by merging all of these, I'm kind of playing along with romanticizing and myth creation of landscapes, which is usually represented in textiles and is used to reinforce identity construction, and also depict and in that way process my own life, which I think that people who live in the south of Mexico City can relate to, and whenever they see the piece. So this is another trial of the collaging, and then also my dog standing on lava on volcanic rock. And then for this piece, we also wanted to solve questions like how can something of an architectural scale made to divide between inside and outside and to keep people outside can withhold the warmth of a textile. So I thought that by making it more visually accessible and depicting daily life in a human scale, it could be like a way to have people who engage with it feel closer to it. And then also a question, and then this is another, no, wait, so this is like also the other question, which is, what is a material which is largely available within cities and that we can weave with? And as its final form was printed, I decided to work with images that I took from with my phone. And I edited them and I processed them in a similar way to how one would break apart fiber for spinning. And then I arranged them gray as warp and blue as weft. So, oh wait, I can go back. So here you can see the warp, the gray warp, the blue weft, and the pattern and how the images are taken apart and then put together as like a one thread. And since the completion of this project, I've been reflecting on what it can give us to repetitively process images, which we, in this current time, consume in an obsessive and compulsive manner. And I think that this form of recognizable abstraction that is represented here and on the inside of the museum can help us look at our everyday life through a different lens. So here and on the inside of the museum, that's the one part of the things I'm showing, the video circuitry and the projection. And in this same spirit, I have been looking to break apart images that on live video. So a soft distortion and heavy abstraction that's obtained from playing with the luminosity, contrast, and color through video processing and also through frame loom weaving. So inside, I have that, and then also like a tiny frame loom weaving. I have installed glints of this research comparing weaving and analog processed video, thinking of them as image technologies where fidelity is not the most important aspect. There I have processed and projected live video feed with a faint feedback and a small weaving, as I mentioned. I personally think the video projection switches you to an alternate reality where everything is pastel colored and beautiful and where people are ghosts. And the projected video also has an oscillator, which you can't really see in this particular image, but I'll show later. And I'll develop more on that technique. So yeah, we'll see it later. And then the weaving, depicting my hand, my most precious working tool, and the part of our body that we kind of all use to confirm that we are on video. That is what I'm depicting. And then it comes from an exercise of translation of processed image into woven image. And I was playing with a projection of a newly built image processing circuit that I learned from Sean Hallowell. And I recorded this interaction with my phone and then took screenshots to then weave these screenshots. And a complication of this translation that I quickly learned is that there is a certain magic that of live video that is very hard to translate to woven image. But then I eventually realized that if I could make the color vibrate, that it could, and that vibration could easily be achieved by the optical color mixing of woven threads, which here it's like very, very faint, and it's just like the warp is actually like a very faint purple, and mixed with the blue, it kind of helps it pop pretty much. And this could kind of emulate the magical alternate colorful reality of processed video. And that's the image I wove. And aside from all these technical and formal rabbit holes, what I find particularly transcendent in these techniques is the reminder of the presence of the body within digitality. To start with, our interfaces are always built by and for human bodies in some way, like even the ones that feel the most apart from us. But I do think that weaving and analog hardware are a very good reminder that the body is present in tech. And this brings us to my current obsession in my practice, which is square waves. And this means finding applications of binary logic in analog formats and, for example, woven threads. So this research involves analog synthesis and also woven cloth. So what brings them together? The digital in the body, or the body in the digital, I think. So a square wave is basically something like this. And for weaving, the binary logic of zeros and ones, that was the beginning of coding, that is thread up, thread down. And in synthesis, it's the square wave it has a digital logic, like compared to, for example, a sine wave, where you kind of have all these moments that you touch on, but then with a square wave, you kind of only have two places, up or down. And in those only two states, in video, it causes vertical or horizontal lines, which when you combine them together look like a matrix. And so that's the lines that you see in that video it's actually an oscillator, but it's not properly lined up. So that's why it looks like squiggly. And then in sound, the wave in a slower frequency causes a pulse, and then on a faster frequency, it's kind of like a scream, a digital scream. And then this is a schematic, and then the breadboard, which has the circuit that I have built many, many times with many different changes to just have it do something slightly different. And within this line of thought and line of work, I am prioritizing a sensible expansion that comes from like sensible stimuli, which I think allows us to look at our reality through a processed lens. And yeah, so there you can see some lines, and you can have the horizontal and the vertical, and I'm still working on that, but there's more to come soon on this project, as I am preparing to go weave in Chicago at Loom Room under TC2, and also do research on the Sandin image processor, which is a video synthesizer that was built by Dan Sandin, who is teaching in Chicago, but not at the School of the Art Institute of Chicago, which is where they have I think maybe like one of three of the image processors. And yeah, and that project is partly supported by the Luminarts Cultural Foundation, which is also in Chicago for people who are in Chicago, and I think under 30 you can apply. And I think, yeah, the applications for visual arts should be open, I think right now. So that is what I have to say. It's a bit soon, but okay.
Thank you so much, Carolina. Let's give Carolina a big round of applause in the chat again. This was so beautiful. It's speaking to my own love of electronics and technology, and it's nice to see the way you think about that area. And I feel like the way you say weaving and analog hardware remind us that the body is present in tech is so beautiful and potent. And yeah, I want to just send an invitation to the audience to write your questions in the chat. I'm going to turn it over to Stephen to moderate our chat. Maybe I will get us started off with a question. What I notice in your practice, Carolina, is you move across all these different spaces. So there's photography, printmaking, analog media, performance. So maybe what is the compass that kind of guides you as you work? Is it a metaphor or an idea?
I think it tends to be very intuitive, uh, and and then I intuitively approach something, media, and then eventually start realizing the connections, or I make the connections myself between them. But I do think that something that I really love is finding how to do something really, really well and then just like breaking it apart. So that's probably like one of the things that I've enjoyed the most with weaving, like just making like something structurally sound, but at the same time that is just like not usable at all, or just is very, yeah, it just has like a other parameters in mind when it's getting made, other than I think I just want to not try to do things in an optimized way, in a fast way, and so that's, I think that those are the bases with which I move in my making.
Thank you for that. I I love the way, like Laura says, I love the way your practice moves between mediums. You said something really incredibly beautiful earlier in the lecture, and I wondered if you want to just expand on it. And apologies if I'm misquoting you, please correct me. I think you said weaving is a process that codifies reality. Is that
Mm.
exactly what you said as I was writing it down? Did I
Mm.
quote you?
No, no, but yes, but no, but it's very similar. It's more so weaving, like I am thinking of it as a technology that process reality.
Uh-huh.
So in like a symbolic manner, but also like on material manner, like you are, but also, wait, what did you say? Because I that also makes sense. Codifies reality.
Yeah, I
And
was writing it down trying to
yeah.
remember it. I was like, weaving codifies reality.
I do think that they have to they have something to do with each other, because the processing of it is, or like the codifying of it is a way of processing it, because you are kind of like, I don't know, taking there's, for example, like the zigzag, which can be on, I think the I just this is from a very long time ago, so I might be kind of wrong, but in Andean textiles, the zigzag could be a river, but and then a friend of mine was like, but it can also be a snake.
Yeah.
Um, and then so you are just taking these forms of from reality and then codifying them, processing them by being like, okay, so they move like this, so then that's their symbol, and you are codifying like a whole like animal or river into a graphic thing. But then also materially, I have thought that textiles, like you are taking, and this goes like from traditional ways of making, but also to industrial ways of making, because, for example, like they always kind of show the spirit, I guess, in which they were made. If you are harvesting wool or cotton and then spinning it, you are processing like your reality, your surroundings. And then also maybe like the trees that you are harvesting from or the animals that you are harvesting from have something like emotional or some cultural importance. So that is also like a way of processing that importance and giving it like its space, and could even be a form of prayer. And then with more industrial ways of making, it's just really showing how far removed we are from the processes that our clothes go through to get built, and the materials, like it's like we don't even know where they come from. And that is shown in just how cold the textile looks. And I'm just like looking at my sleeve and thinking about that. So yeah, I think that's how I think about it. Mhm.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm going to think about that all the time now. That's like gonna like just that's gonna be like I'm gonna be in my head every time I see this. That's so interesting, especially that idea of like, wool and cotton processing the reality, and that those kind of like also those dangers of culture, kind of the things that the bad parts of that process end up in the garment as well. I'll think about
Mhm.
that next time I'm looking at fast fashion.
Yeah, yeah. And then also just like how even at the level of fast fashion, clothing is like a representation of identity, and even like our preference between one brand symbol to another brand symbol, and um like the ideas that we form around them. It's like, why am I buying Nike over, I don't know, Lacoste or something like that? It's just like it really is how you are building your identity. Uh-huh. And
Oh,
textiles have
yes.
done that since forever. Mhm.
Totally, totally. That's amazing. I love thinking about that. Um, a great question from in your work, right? A great question here is your thoughts about scale, right? Because your woven pieces are very like human sized, hand sized, and then you're working with projection, and you were talking about the love of
Mhm.
projection in spaces before, and I wonder if that relates to that balance, and why you might use scale and how you think about it in your practice.
Mhm. Yeah, I think like the small weavings that, like, for example, here on the screen, like something I've realized while making is um there's two things. Like with the projection scale, whenever you um project something really big that should not be that big, like for example that hand, you kind of, and this I get from a friend who is called Mariel Vela, and she gave a lecture on um, film, and I forget the name of the filmmaker, but like older French nature um, films. I might have to get back at it, but it's like she was talking about, for example, there was this thing of an octopus and how it was like projected on a really big screen, and how that allowed people to feel closer to the octopus, because you would like the octopus now had a face, or like a, not a face, but like a human face, like yeah, like not just a head, but like a face with, and you could see its gestures in a more human way. And I think that really does happen whenever you project something really big, like it just, you are not used to see it in that scale, so it just becomes like something that you should pay more attention to, and like the gestures become more grand, so you are thinking about just like something that you see all the time in a very different way. And then for the smaller, more like hand-sized pieces, like the weaving on the right, um, I think that it's like whenever you have something really small, you kind of feel like you really have to pay attention to it. Um, and it's like a very different, yeah, attention and intention that you are giving to how you perceive the piece. And I feel like many times within art making, there's like this inclination towards making everything bigger and more like grander, but also like there is so much that can be said within very like smaller intimate pieces. So I think that's something that I think about while making. And also just because textiles are you are like constructing thread by thread, and since I'm making this on a frame loom, like I'm really just like touching every thread up, every thread down, and I'm doing it consciously. So I kind of want people to see every thread consciously. Mhm.
Yeah, thank you so much. I love that so much, and the idea of the intimacy of the small object versus the larger ones is it's such an important like conversation, right? To like even push back against the way in which art school tells everybody make it big, right? Make it big, make it big. And what is that about, right? So I love that your work is like openly questioning that like in the gallery space. And additionally, using textiles to do that is such a fun way to talk about painting. Like point at painting and be like, actually, well, there's this other
Yeah.
skills and other ways to think about. Just thinking about your first part of your conversation. I have another just a question for you. People are wondering more particularly about your material choices you make when you use the TC2. Um,
Mhm.
for your weaving and some of the process that you have, the colors, the choices you make, and that is such a intensive process and such an intentional process to use the TC2, as everyone probably in this chat
Mhm.
knows today. And so, what are some of those choices that you make as you select your materials?
Okay, so I guess just as a disclaimer, this is actually gonna be the first time I weave on a TC2 loom. So, but I've woven on frame looms and backstrap looms and floor looms. And what I am thinking, like for those, it's been just like, I think it depends on what you want to say, what you are choosing. If you want to make something more graphic, I usually I'm inclined to use more animal fibers because I tend to dye the threads myself, and those are the ones that hold the color the best.
Oh, wow.
Um, but I also, for example, I'm staring at this piece where I just want it to be about the structure, and I just have it like on think I'll just turn around. It's like don't look at my room until I just So yeah, so this is just all about the structure. So I just made it all white. Um and for the TC2 weavings, I am thinking of that I do want to work more with images because it's very like the project is going to be very correlated to the video processing. So it's very likely going to be wool that I'm going to be dyeing and mixed with um, cotton, which is what I think the warp is probably going to be. Yeah.
And thank
Mhm.
you for sharing those parts of your practice. I love that so much. It's
Mhm.
it's so hard sometimes even to say like, how do I make decisions? And you just
Mhm.
no. But I just want to go back to another comment that you made earlier today, is that you said in projections, people are ghosts.
Mhm.
Then you move them into the material world with the weaving. And I also just want to say that that hand weaving you have, like, it vibrates more than the video, in
Mhm.
my opinion, it vibrates more than the video, which is so hard to do. So to your artwork, amazing. But could you talk more about this idea of a video projection? This like
Mhm.
the contrast between materials, or just how you think a video projection is like a ghost? I think it's beautiful.
Mm, I think that one was particularly uh, like this form of, like, you can see it there, how the processing made it so that you can only see like a ghostly silhouette. Uh, and it's just very formal, but it just it, for example, it takes a little bit for people who go to the museum to understand that they are looking at themselves, because you kind of are like stripped away of everything. Maybe if you have like a very dark or very light t-shirt, you might be able to see that. But yeah, and I think that's just something that maybe not doesn't put you necessarily in the ghostly realm all the time, but whenever you are uh, processing video, it just really abstracts, like flattens everything, and you become like on the same level as the wall and as everything else. So you like kind of exist in a very different realm. And yeah, you can also see that there, like, and I think that's also partly why I'm like the distortion of the image makes it so that it's like something maybe barely recognizable, maybe because of scale. You are like, oh, the thing on the right is maybe a human because of the scale. But and then sometimes if when the image is moving, you can see like hints and glimpses of maybe a hand or a face or something like that. But yeah, and I think that also goes back to um, breaking up structures and in some form reality, like just taking it apart and being able to see it in a different way, um, for just like to, and I think my goal in general with my artwork tends to be just like expanding sensibilities, like maybe even just a tiny bit. And that usually comes from like surprise of like, oh, those are really pretty colors, and it's like live video, and it's something that I'm like seeing the circuit that's uh, doing all of this, and then I'm seeing the results. So I think it's like a mix of things, and it also usually happens with performance. Like it's more of like an experience, I would say, but yeah, with the intention of expanding sensibilities. Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it reminds me of Namjoon Paik in the way that
Mm-hmm.
the South Korean artist who, they way that spirituality and the presence and the physical moves through video.
Mm-hmm.
And make you just like also it's like think expanding video as you're expanding weaving in these two
Mm-hmm.
places, and that cross pollination makes a lot of thoughtful moments. I want to give
Mm-hmm.
Laura just a second to see if she has any last questions, or if I'm missing anything from the chat that she wants to point out, because I could keep chatting with you all day, but I'll open the floor.
No, thank you for checking in with me. I think we maybe have one more room for one more question before we close up. Emma has a question in the chat that I think is pretty interesting. Emma writes, I'm curious to hear a bit more about the way you think about color in weaving, especially this aspect of how color appears in cloth versus digital media. Is it important to you that the colors of digital interfaces are referenced in your woven translations, or is this a decision where abstraction of the palette feels more natural? So, yeah, if you could just reflect on that
Mm-hmm.
question or those questions a bit, that'd be great.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that, well, the color part is something that I'm um starting to think about more and more. For example, like, well, in this particular instance, I am trying to like very much just recreate the moment. But then it's sometimes it's like, okay, if I would have used black thread instead of the purple one, it like you couldn't really have the same optical effect because the black would contrast too much with white, so it would just look very like the color mixing would look very, very different. And I think so, like with this project, I'm very much interested in the colors vibrating. So that's like the main part. And then I think slowly, as I am breaking apart what the color does, it's uh probably we'll have to think more about, for example, like the psychology of color, or maybe like symbologies of colors. But also, I think in general, I kind of just really like things that shine. And so I have this that this is just like my favorite moment of the circuit in the museum. Because it really shimmered. Um, so I think that's also just something that I like to depict. And probably maybe that's also why I'm interested in the vibration of the color. I also sometimes have woven with metallic thread, but it's actually hard to get like to get it working properly, I have found. But yeah, I think I'm and maybe like that decision is sort of superficial. Maybe it's something that's more like deeper, that I have don't haven't thought about as much yet. But yeah, so I think that that has to do with my color decisions. Oh, and the last thing I was gonna say is that since I'm thinking of weaving as an image processing technology, I have also started weaving images that were not processed before. So, um, and I'm wondering if I should go very quickly to get that example, but if maybe not. Okay.
You
So
don't have too much
maybe
time, but I like that you can leave
yeah,
us
it's
wanting
we
something
are
more.
you're tight on time, but I'm with that. I'm just thinking like how like the ways in which I can make rules for the abstraction of the image per se. So like if I have, for example, I don't know, just even like my face. So and then I have like a thread selection of I don't know, blue, pink, blah blah blah. So then I I was thinking if I could make myself into a machine, how would I choose the colors for each part of my body? So that's another way in which I'm starting to think about color now.
Well, it's truly beautiful, and the work is really inspiring and really resonant, and I think shimmering in a lot of ways, even if it's in that little peak of the glossy cloth coming through your woven experiment or the shimmer in the collage.
Mhm.
There's like a thread of that throughout, which I really love, and it feels lively and like it's something that can connect through time and space, almost like, signals and imagery, which is really lovely. I want to say thank you to everyone for joining us today. Thank you especially to Carolina. Thank you to Stephen and to Etta Sandri, who's on the call as well, for coordinating this talk series. As I've said before, this is our last talk in our 2024-2025 series. We're thinking about future talk series, nothing concrete yet, but we'll certainly let you know when we know. You can follow us on the Unstable Design Lab Instagram or sign up for our mailing list via the website if you're curious to know more. Carolina, I hope you have a great day. I hope your dogs leave you alone.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Yeah.
that calmer. Thank you. And yeah, I hope you all have a great day. Thank you, Laura and Stephen and Eda, and thank you all for being here and listening to the talk.
Great.
Mm.
All right. Well, bye everyone, and we hope to see you all in person or online somewhere in the world soon.